sometimes as we look at the world around us, we look and we see that the world is just increasingly wicked. And we might be thinking in our mind, man, this world is worse than it's ever been. And over the next several weeks, I want to look at a passage of scripture or a man in the Bible named Noah, and how to walk in wisdom in a world full of wickedness. We shouldn't be surprised that the world's growing worse and worse. In 2 Timothy 3 and verse number 13, it said, "But evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived." The Bible's already told us that the world's going to get worse and worse. But if we think we have it bad, we got to look at Genesis chapter 6 and verses 5 through 7. It says, "And that God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thought of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I've created from the face of the earth, both man and beast and creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them." And so we think that our world is bleak right now. Genesis gives us a very bleak picture of what the world is like. But there is hope that we can learn from the life of Noah. When we come to Genesis chapter 6, to say that things seem pretty bleak is an understatement. God said the wickedness of the heart of man was great, and every imagination of the thought of his heart was only evil continually. And the closer that we get to the end of time, the more and more our days seem like the wickedness that God has described here in Noah's day. In fact, we shouldn't be surprised, because even in the New Testament, it would say, "As the days of Noah were, so shall the coming of the man be, Son of Man be." And so how do we walk in wisdom in this wicked world? I believe that we can find several principles from Noah in chapter 6 of Genesis for walking in wisdom in a wicked world. The first thing that we're going to look at today is number 1, Noah walked with God. If we look at verses 8 and 9 of our same passage in Genesis, it says, "But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in all his generation, and Noah walked with God." The first thing is that to walk wise is we must walk with God, not ahead of God, not behind God, not away from God, but with God. I can remember several years ago now, my children were watching a pet rescue show on the Discovery Channel, and the episode that they were watching was a lady who had taken in a stray dog. She had taken care of the dog for a few years and kind of let the dog just run around, and there was a city ordinance that came down that that dogs had to have a leash and a collar on them at all times if they were going to be walking around in the city. And she had received the warning that if the dog was not trained or to walk on a leash, within 30 days that the dog was going to be taken away from her and euthanized. So she couldn't do it herself. She called someone to help her with that, an expert in the field. And in 30 days, this guy came in, trained this dog who had never worn a collar, never worn a leash, how to walk on a leash. And that dog learned to obey its owner and walk on a leash and walk beside the lady. Not in front of her, not behind her, but right next to the lady. You know, God expects his children to walk with him. Many times we get distracted and we try to walk in front of God, or we try to walk behind God, and it ends up costing us to do foolish things. If we walk in front of God, many times we make decisions that end up causing us regret. If we walk behind God, many times we miss out on the blessings that God desires for us to have. But God desires for us to obey him and to walk with him. If we walk away from God, it leads us down a path that eventually leads to destruction and ruin. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord because Noah walked with God. Will you walk with God? This is how we walk in wisdom in a world full of chaos, is to walk with God. God bless.